Welcome everyone to this new session of mobile communication and computing. In the last session, we had seen how signal propagation is different in wireless communication compared to wired communication. This is primarily because there is no physical medium in the wireless communication. In this session, we will see additional effects on the signal propagation in wireless communication, then different multiplexing techniques used in the wireless communication, and then we will get introduced to new technology called as spread spectrum, which is primarily used in the mobile communication. So let's begin with the effects on signal propagation. Now if we consider there is no obstacle or obstruction in between sender and receiver, then signal travels the path of line of sight just like a light between sender and receiver. Even then, it still experiences the free space loss. As we know, the primary reason of signal degradation is because of distance between the sender and receiver. Apart from the distance, there are several other factors which can affect the received signal strength or power of received signal. Now let's see them one by one. The first factor that affects the received signal strength is the fading. Fading is nothing but variation in the attenuation of a signal that may be due to time, frequency, or several other parameters. Primarily in wireless communication, this fading occurs because of frequency. So it is called as frequency selective fading. We will see about frequency selective fading in detail at the end of this session. Then, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, there are several diagrams shown depicting different phenomena which affects the received signal strength. First one of them is shadowing. In the cities, there are tall buildings, so rarely we receive a signal directly from the sender, that is our tower. So let's consider this first diagram, shadowing, where if you are standing near the wall here, then you will not receive the signal at all, because when the signal incidents on the wall, it gets reflected and travels a different path in which you are not standing. So you are standing in a shadowed region, so you will not receive a signal at a full strength, or you may not receive a signal at all. So that is the another additional effect on the signal propagation. Then reflection. Reflection is a well-known concept. When signal impacts on the large bodies such as tall buildings or trees or something like that, the amount of power that is reflected from such obstacles is less than amount of power incident on the obstacle. For example, in this particular diagram, if we see, this is the incident ray or incident signal. If it has a power P, then reflected power P1 will be less than P, because some of the power incident on the wall of the building will be absorbed by the building and remaining power will be reflected back to the medium once again. So a receiver will not receive entire power that was being transmitted. So that is another degradation in the received signal caused by the reflection phenomena. Then comes the concept of refraction, this diagram. There are certain materials which do not reflect the signal incident on them. Some of them allows the signal to go through them, but signals do not follow the same path when they enter the medium. Like here, when the ray incidents on this particular medium, it is not continuing its path of propagation. Rather, the path of propagation is changed because some of its power is absorbed by the medium and remaining power is allowed to go through the medium. Now this refraction, this is called as refraction. This refraction is dependent on density of the medium. The denser the medium, more the refraction. And because of this, signal power is lost during the medium. When it comes out of the denser medium again into the free space, it has a much lesser power compared to the original power. So this is refraction, which causes the signal degradation. Then the next factor that affects the signal reception is a scattering. There are many obstacles present in the medium, like small lampposts or signals which are present on the roads. When transmitted signal hits these small obstacles, then as you can see in the diagram, the one signal is dispersed or distributed into multiple signals, each one having smaller power. In short, the power of incident signal is distributed into multiple signals with smaller powers. This distribution of power may not be equal. Now we don't know which one of the smaller signal we are going to receive. So original power may be Pt, and as there are three rays shown in this diagram, there will be smaller signals with the power P1, P2 and P3. This P1, P2 and P3 will always have lesser power compared to the Pt. Now this is called as scattering. Then last concept that we are going to see here is a diffraction. Because of the presence of mountains, hills, whenever there is a sharp edges at the top of the mountain, when signal incidents on such sharp edges, they diffract as shown in this particular diagram. Here the incident signal hits the top of the mountain, and because of that it changes its path. Not only changes its path, some of the energy of the incident signal is absorbed by this mountain, and remaining energy is traveling again in the free space along a different path. So this is another reason why signal propagation in the wireless media is affected, and received signal is not same as the transmitted signal. So if we combine all these effects like distance, fading, shadowing, reflection, refraction, scattering and diffraction, then received power which will be much shorter or much smaller compared to the transmitted power, and that gives the rise to better receivers compared to the wired communication receivers. Apart from this, all these concepts we are talking about single path of propagation. Okay, but signals do not receive, or signals are not received via a single path in wireless communication, and that's where arises the concept of multipath propagation. Multipath propagation is seen because of primarily due to reflection, scattering and diffraction. Let's consider this diagram. Here if you see, at the sender there is one tower which is the sender. It is sending, let's say, two symbols. First one is shown in black and second one is shown in red, which is of smaller amplitude compared to first one. Now this signal has to be sent to the person sitting in this particular car. Now this person will receive a signal via three paths, let's say. First one is a direct line of sight path, that is direct from the sender. Second one through this building, that is because of reflection, and third one because of this signal post, that may be due to scattering. So a person in the car receives three types of signals. One, line of sight direct, second due to reflection, third due to scattering. So as you can see, signal at the receiver has a three versions in this diagram. If you see closely, first symbol, obviously the line of sight signal will have a much larger signal strength compared to the other two, because it did not experience any power loss due to additional effects like scattering or reflection. So it only get affected because of distance between sender and receiver. So first symbol is okay, we have received the signal correctly, although it has a lesser power, but we have received it correctly. Then because of this reflection and scattering, we receive two more signals, each one of smaller amplitude than a signal received from line of sight. as you can see here. There are two more signals. Okay. Now at the sender, if you see closely, there is a distance between first symbol and second symbol. This space is called as guard space. This is to avoid neighboring symbols interfering with each other. So the data should not be mixed. That's why there is a guard space. Now at the receiver, when we receive a second symbol, if you see closely here, the first signal received because of line of sight connection of a second symbol is coinciding with the third signal received of a first symbol. I am repeating, the third signal received of a first symbol is coinciding with the first signal received of a second symbol. This happened because of this multipath propagation. Multiple paths leading to the reception of different versions of a signal. And then there are further two small signals of a second symbol, which is because of this reflection and scattering. Now the area of discussion is the coinciding of third version of a first symbol and first version of a second symbol. This coinciding is known as inter-symbol interference. Interference with the neighboring symbol which is not desired, and for that reason we have included guard space, but because of multipath propagation, effect of guard space is nullified. So multipath propagation also leads to the bad receptions of signals. Okay, so this is another effect that is usually seen in the wireless communication. In wired communication we don't observe such interferences because of dedicated medium between sender and receiver, but in wireless we do, and that is the downside of the wireless communication. Now this is about effects on signal propagation. Now to avoid such kind of situations, we can use different multiplexing techniques. Let's see them one by one. Or before going to multiplexing techniques, we will see other effects which are seen in the wireless communication. The effects of mobility. In wireless communication, or more specifically in the mobile communication, the users, that is sender and receiver, both can be mobile or one of them can be mobile. Now because of this mobility, signal paths change continuously. Let's say a sender, when it starts communicating, is, let's say, standing here, and receiver is standing somewhere here. But as the conversation goes on, sender may move away from the original location and receiver also may move from the original location. So the obstructions between these two, that is sender and receiver, will change continuously, and because of that signal paths change. Okay, so the effect of the parameters like scattering, reflection or refraction, they will not be continuous or they will not be predictable in wireless communication. So you will see different delays for different signal parts, also different phases of the different signal parts. So there can be a short changes in the power received, which is also known as short-term fading, as shown in this particular diagram. Because of particular location of a sender and receiver, a particular frequency may get attenuated by the noise, and that is known as short-term fading, because after that attenuation it again rises back to the original signal strength. So it is known as short-term problem and short-term fading. Apart from that, as if the sender and receiver keep moving away from each other, then this attenuation in signal will start to increase furthermore, and that's why you will see more fading as the time goes on, and this is called as long-term fading. So this long-term fading is observed at a slow rate compared to the short-term fading. So this is another factor which affects the communication in the wireless media in terms of sender and receiver. So we have seen several factors affecting signal propagation. First one being the distance between sender and receiver. Second one, additional effects like shadowing, reflection, and so on. Third one being multipath propagation, and fourth, but not the last one, there may be some more also depending on situation. The last one may be, or fourth one may be, the user mobility, that is sender and receiver's mobility, that is primarily seen in the mobile communication. Now let's see the different multiplexing techniques used in the wireless communication. Some of them you have already studied in this second year. Let's recall them again. It will be a short discussion for this. The most popular that you know from the second year is time division multiplexing, frequency division multiplexing, and code division multiplexing. One another concept that is added here is a space division multiplexing. Now we will see time, frequency, and code division again. But talking about space division multiplexing, if you see the diagram which is shown over here, this particular diagram, in space division multiplexing, entire space or geographical area is divided into smaller areas. These are known as spaces, let's say S1, S2 and S3 in this case, and each space or each area is allocated certain number of frequency channels. Okay, channels here means range of frequencies allocated to that particular area for particular users. So space division is usually seen in the FM radio. FM radio uses space division multiplexing, where a same station can be used, or same station frequency can be used in different cities. For example, 93.5 is one FM channel which is I don't know the name, but transmitting radio signals in Mumbai, Pune, Kolhapur, every region, but the contents of each transmission are different according to their city. So that is a part of your space division multiplexing. The goal of this using multiplexing is that use of shared medium for multiple users. As we are having so many users nowadays, we have to share the medium, whether it is physical medium or wireless medium, it has to be shared, and there are different ways in which that can be shared, and those ways are nothing but multiplexing techniques. Now, irrespective of the type of multiplexing, every multiplexing technique will require guard space. In case of time division multiplexing, guard space will be in terms of time. That means between two consecutive transmission, there will be some short space of time where there will be no transmission. In case of frequency, two consecutive channels will have some guard band, frequency band in between them to avoid interference. Codes, two consecutive codes will be orthogonal to each other. That means they will be completely different from each other, so that they cannot be predicted from one another. Also, geographically, cities have to be further away from each other in order to repeat the same frequency. So let's see previous multiplexing techniques one by one, starting with frequency division multiplexing. It is nothing but a technique of dividing an entire spectrum into small frequency band. As you can see in this diagram, the entire spectrum, which is shown over here along the x-axis, that is frequency axis. Now entire spectrum is divided into smaller frequency bands, K1, K2 up to K6. These frequency bands are called as channels. Each band contains certain fixed number of frequency. A user gets to access a particular channel for transmission for entire amount of time. Y-axis is our time axis. So all channels are occupying same time, that is this one. For the entire period of time, all channels are active. So channel gets a certain band for the spectrum for whole time, and users can transmit or receive during that particular frequency channel. Now advantage of this type of multiplexing is that you don't require synchronization or coordination, because anyone can transmit at any time, and since everyone is having a different channel allocated to it, there will not be any time related interference with each other. So that is very good advantage of this particular type of multiplexing. Another advantage is it is applicable to analog signals as well, like sine waves. Since sine waves are frequency dependent, or they have frequency associated with it, different sine waves can be allocated different channels depending on their frequency. So analog signals usually prefer frequency division multiplexing. The disadvantage is that there is a wastage of bandwidth in case of traffic distributed unevenly. What's the meaning of this? If there are more users in a particular frequency band and less users in another channel, then the bandwidth will get wasted. For example, let's say K1 has a more number of users compared to K6. So more number of users are sharing K1 compared to less number of users sharing K6. So obviously the bandwidth or channel will be distributed for a very short amount of time, or very short number of frequencies in K1, and for K6, since there are very less number of users, every user will get large amount of bandwidth for transmission and reception. So that is waste of bandwidth in case of small number of users. Okay. Then another disadvantage is inflexibility. If there are no users in particular frequency channel, that is, let's say K5, no one is transmitting or receiving, then it gets completely wasted. K1, K2, K3, K4 and K6 all have users, but K5 doesn't have any user, then bandwidth of K5 will be wasted. So it should be allocated to someone else, but that is not possible in frequency division multiplexing. So that is another disadvantage of frequency division multiplexing. Then time division multiplexing. Compared to frequency division multiplexing, in the time division multiplexing, the spectrum is not divided, where the time will be divided and the entire spectrum will be available to all users, but for limited amount of time. So as you can see, now on x-axis we have frequency, on y-axis we have time. Now time is divided into smaller bands, these are called as time slots, but entire frequency spectrum is available to the users. Okay, so because of this, everyone will get a chance, but at a different time. So this has an advantage of achieving the larger data rate compared to frequency division. Since we get to access the entire frequency band, we can transmit more amount of data, although for short time, but in a single go you can transmit or receive large amount of data. Okay, so also it has another advantage that you don't need to have multiple frequencies available for communication. Same frequency is used by everyone, so same frequency can be used for communication by entire group of people. So as frequencies are scarce in availability, this is very good advantage. It is basically used in digital communication, where signals have a particular shape like this square wave, and it can be divided precisely into different time slots. So that is one application area for digital signals. Time division multiplexing is followed. The only drawback or disadvantage is that majorly affects the communication is a necessity of a synchronization. Now when small amount of time is allocated to user, communication should discontinue after completion of that time period. Here in this case, this one. And communication period for second user should start. So there should be a precise synchronization between ending of time slot for first user and start of a time slot for a second user, and that has to be precise. That is only a drawback of the TDM or time division multiplexing. Then to combine the effects or advantages of both TDM and FDM, a third modified technique, multiplexing technique, is time and frequency division multiplexing. As the name suggests, is a combination of both methods where a particular frequency channel or band gets a certain amount of time. So users can transmit for short amount of time for short amount of bandwidth available. Because of this, all users get to transmit at every or different moments of time and for different parts of the available spectrum. So it combines advantages of both TDM and FDM. This technique is primarily used in our GSM mobile communication technology. Now advantages of using this, although it seems pretty complex, as you can see, channel K6 for example or channel K4, which is shown in yellow, it is randomly located cubes in the entire diagram. Sometimes they are second, sometimes they are second last, sometimes last. So it provides the protection against tapping. Tapping means secretly listening to your conversation. So since they are random in nature, you cannot predict when to listen to the particular conversation. So that is better protection against tapping. Now apart from that, it provides protection against frequency selective fading. Frequency selective fading means attenuation in the particular frequency because of having same frequency as of noise. Now as the data transmitted will be at different frequencies, then frequency selective fading will not hamper entire conversation. So that is another advantage. But the drawback or little limitation to this particular technique is that a precise coordination and complex transmission and reception technique should be deployed for time and frequency division multiplexing to be successful. Then finally, the more robust multiplexing technique out of all is a code division multiplexing, where users can transmit at all time using the same frequency, but still their signals will not interfere with each other. This is because of use of unique code for each user. Here in this diagram you will see K1, K2 up to K6. There are different codes which are used for different users. For example, K1 used for user 1, K6 used for user 6, and so on. So because of this, all users can use the same spectrum entirely, so larger data rates are possible and they can transmit at the same time also. So again it will improve the rate of transmission and reception because you will get to transmit for more amount of time. Now how they are separated or how they are avoiding the interference, that is the next question. This is because of use of unique code. Each transmission signal will be encoded with a different code so that no two codes will be no two signals will be interfering with each other. The advantages of this technique being, this is very highly bandwidth efficient because every user can access entire bandwidth, so larger data rates are possible, so that is bandwidth efficient. Also you don't need a synchronization or coordination for reception. You don't have to bother about at what time I am going to receive the signal or at what frequency I am going to receive a signal, as the entire time period and entire frequency band will be available for reception. Also Since each user is using a different code, the tapping in this case will not be very easy, and it provides a robustness against or protection against tapping and interference also. But the drawback or limitation to this technique is that the user data rates may vary. Why user data rates may vary? As the entire bandwidth is available to all users, depending on several parameters, each user will get varying amount of bandwidth available for transmission and reception. For example, if user 1 is transmitting a video, it will occupy more bandwidth compared to user 2 who is transmitting a text. Text requires smaller bandwidth, whereas video requires larger bandwidth. So allocation of bandwidth will be different for different users. So it's not exactly a disadvantage in the real world, as text do not require large bandwidth, so it is acceptable, but in certain cases it may be a disadvantage. Second disadvantage will be use of different codes for different users, means that there is a complexity in the signal generation as well as reception. Okay, you require different receivers for different users, different decoding techniques. Okay, this type of multiplexing is primarily used in spread spectrum technology, which is used in mobile communication, which we are going to see right now. So what is spread spectrum technology? So primary problem in the radio transmission is that frequency dependent fading. That means only particular frequencies get attenuated during the transmission. In this case, this second frequency getting attenuated during transmission. This happens because frequency of a noise matches with this particular frequency. Let's say this is noise. If frequency of this noise is same as that of this frequency, then this particular frequency will get attenuated. That is frequency selective fading. So a narrowband signal means a signal which is having narrow bandwidth. That means limited range of frequencies available for limited number of frequencies available for transmission and reception. In such narrowband signals, if only 4 or 5 frequencies are available, all frequencies can be wiped out by this frequency selective fading. So entire conversation can be wiped off because of this. So the solution is to spread this narrowband signal into a broadband signal. Okay, as you can see in the diagram, this middle portion is this particular thing is a narrowband signal which is spreaded into this particular broadband signal. Because of this, effect of frequency selective fading can be counterfeited. So before transmission, narrowband is converted into broadband and then it is transmitted. At receiver, this broadband signal is converted back into the narrowband signal so that original contents can be retrieved. Okay, so advantage of this technique will be several signals can coexist without any coordination, and also since we are distributing the signal or spreading the signal, it is a tap proof. The secret listeners will not get to know what code was used for spreading the signal. There are two types, direct sequence and frequency hopping, which we will discuss later on in detail. So spread spectrum is nothing but spreading the narrowband spectrum into broadband spectrum before transmission, and at reception converting back that broadband spectrum into narrowband spectrum. This is done primarily to avoid frequency selective fading. So let's see the process in detail. So first step, as shown in the diagram, let's say this is my narrowband signal which I want to transmit and I want to avoid a frequency selective fading. So I am converting this into a broadband signal, that is in the second step. So as you can see, once it is spread into broadband, care should be taken that the total energy within the signal should remain same. Energy means total area of this particular rectangle should remain same. So if it is distributed in a wide band or broad band, its amplitude level should be dropped off. dP by dF is nothing but power spectral density, power with respect to frequency. So narrowband signal within small set of frequencies, large amplitudes or large powers. For large set of frequencies, smaller amplitudes are sufficient. Okay, so total energy remains the same. Now such broadband signal is transmitted in the wireless media. In the media, it gets affected by two types of interferences: broadband interference and narrowband interference. As you can see in the third step, the lowest rectangle is of actual user data. Above that, there is a broadband interference which is attached to the user data, and above that, the tallest rectangle is of narrowband interference. Broadband interference is an interference for broadband channel, and narrowband interference is interference for narrowband channel. Broadband interference will have a small power levels, narrowband interference level will be higher. Now at receiver we receive this type of signal. At receiver we receive combination of three signals. Now we have to retrieve our user data from this signal, which is not easy in its current format. So we have to convert this broadband user data into narrowband user data at this first step. So converting broadband into narrowband again, that is reverse procedure as that of the transmitter. Now at the same time, it should not coincide with the narrowband interference. So to avoid that, spread this narrowband interference into a broadband interference. As you can see in the fifth step, the bottommost rectangle is a broadband interference. At the same time, we can keep broadband interference at the same level because it is not affecting our user data power at the current moment. Then we can chop off or filter out these interferences in the sixth step and choose only user data for reception. So in the last step, you can see the interferences, broadband and narrowband, have been chopped off by the filter. Appropriate filter should be used for chopping of interferences, and it remains only user data available at the decoding stage. So this data can be decoded by the appropriate decoder. One keynote here in this, that the code used for spreading this narrowband to broadband, same code has to be used for converting broadband to narrowband. Now because of this, we can avoid frequency selective fading. Okay, the types of this spread spectrum technology we will see in the next session, but this is the general idea of how narrowband signals can avoid fading by using spread spectrum technology. That's all for today. If you have any queries, don't forget to comment in the replies section of this video. Thank you.